Hey, but everybody, welcome back. I forgot to tell everybody, we passed 1.4 million subscribers on YouTube. And if you add them all, so thank you for that. And if you add everything together, all of our social medias, which is what a lot of people do, which I think is sneaky. But if you do that, we're up to around, we're over 2 million.
Look at you, Jim.
Easy, over 2 million. So anyway, just wanted to say thanks for making us so popular. And we'll see you in, I don't know, there might be tickets for this Friday left in Chicago. If there are, grab them. But if not, we'll see you in Grand Rapids on Saturday. What's that? Oh, Grand Rapids is, yeah. And then we'll see, well then forget that. And then we'll see you in Atlanta. We're going to be in Atlanta September 6th, which is actually, it's a suburb. It's Duluth, Georgia. So what's the name of that theater?
Gas South Theater.
The Gas South Theater in Duluth, Georgia. So we haven't ever played Atlanta. So this is a big deal. Oh, I got to let my friend Sean know. Sean Young. Oh, she texted me that. I forgot I got to text her back. Anyway, and then we'll be in Jacksonville, Florida. Jacksonville, Florida, top 10 largest cities in America. Did you know that? Didn't know that. Jacksonville, Florida. So we've never been to Jacksonville, Florida. So this should also be, I like when we go to a city for the first time, right? We did? Oh, look at that. Fantastic. Yeah, well, it's Jacksonville. And
Misha's really mouthy today.
She's really mouthy. You're going to be talking that much, you just get a goddamn microphone in front of you. Okay, let's bring on our guests. We have a special guest with us, a return guest to the show, ladies and gentlemen, Jennifer Say. She's an American author, filmmaker, business executive, retired artistic gymnast. She was did you see her breakdancing at the, no. Anyway, she was the 1986 USA Gymnastics National, no kidding. And I probably already knew this and I forgot. She was the 1986 USA Gymnastics National Champion and a 7-time member of the U.S. Women's National Team. She produced the 2020 Emmy Award-winning documentary film Athlete A, which connected the crimes of Larry Nassar to systemic abuses in the Olympic movement. Oh, that son of a... In her memoir, Levi's Unbuttoned, she wrote, that's a provocative title. She wrote about being asked to leave her position as the company's chief marketing and brand president because of her vocal opposition to the extended closure of San Francisco's public schools during the COVID pandemic. And guess who turned out to be right? She turned out to be right about that. Now they all admit it. And everybody pretends like they were never for locking down schools. Yeah. More recently, she launched the XX-XY Athletics, described as the only athletic brand standing up for women's sports. Please welcome back to the show, Jennifer Say. Hey, Jennifer, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Jimmy.
Wow.
Again.
I guess I knew you were an athlete, but I used to smoke pot back then when we talked, so it probably went in one ear and out the other.
Wow, that's a recent quitting then.
Yeah.
I think we did talk about it, and you were interested in the subject because I was the first person to speak out about abuse in the sport. I wrote a book about it in 2008, and you were very interested, and we talked about coming back to talk about it. So now is the perfect time. Okay,
fantastic. So, boy, how does something like Larry Nassar happen?
Well, it happens because the governing bodies care more about their reputations and generating, sponsorship dollars, and then they care about the athletes. They don't care about the athletes. I think that's very much linked to probably what we'll talk about. I think we're going to talk probably about the boxing, so-called women's boxing in the Olympics. But these governing bodies, they do not care about the athletes. The athletes are widgets. They don't think about the fact that the athletes are what make the sport, and they need to protect the athletes. Without the athletes, there's no Olympics, there is no sports. I mean, we could do without the break dancer that you mentioned earlier, but I think she's not really an athlete. But they failed to care for these people, these young girls in the case of gymnastics. And it took an army of survivors to stand up together and demand a safer training environment. Entirely remedied at this point, but I do think it's better than it was when I was training.
So did you experience anything nefarious when you were training?
Well, I write extensively in my book about the emotional and physical abuse, which is pretty intense and I think sets the stage and creates the conditions for sexual abuse to occur. I was not sexually abused in the sport. I was around serial pedophiles all the time. The national team coach in the 1980s, who I traveled around not just the country, but the world with. He was the 1984 Olympics coach. He's now been banned from the sport for raping several athletes. And we all knew to stay away from him. And we all knew that if we said anything, nothing would happen with that, that he was this well-respected coach. We were supposed to kind of protect ourselves, stay away from him as best as you could, that he was a highly regarded coach. Mary Lou Retton won the Olympics in 1984. His name is Don Peters. He's now since been banned from the sport, like I said, for raping quite a few young athletes, young gymnasts. But I was not subjected to it. I managed to avoid that fate. I was subjected to pretty intense emotional and physical abuse. I trained on a broken ankle for 2 years. I ate 300 calories a day for 4 years. We were weighed in twice a day. Our weight was announced on the loudspeaker. We were shamed and bullied. Food was taken right from our hands. And so I think it's all part of the same horrible, ugly stew.
Wow. How do you, well, there are two questions. You need protein to build muscle. And if you're on such a low calorie diet, that's got to affect you physically and in a negative way, right?
I think so. I broke a lot of bones. It's a very dangerous sport, so that happens regardless. But, I'd break one and then I'd break the other. Part of that was I never let my injuries heal. I came back from a broken femur and broke the other ankle just a few months later because I never let the femur heal. So I was, favoring the other leg. The body type, the aesthetic in the 80s and 90s was very thin. And let's remember, it's a subjective sport. So you are judged. And the aesthetic, the look was prepubescent, very tiny. That's not the case anymore. Now the sport has gotten, the skills themselves in gymnastics are so much harder, require so much more strength. I don't know if it would be possible today. And the body type has changed. The aesthetic has changed to support those more difficult skills. But you would be surprised when you're running on adrenaline and fear, you can subsist on a pretty low calorie diet. And when I say running on fear, I mean of the coaches, not the skills.
So, I watched briefly some of the female gymnastics at the Olympics, and I was shocked because what you're saying is their body types have changed. They have hips.
Yeah.
Now, yeah. I remember when I grew up watching female gymnastics in the Olympics, they didn't have any hips and they were very skinny. But now, and the women are like 28 years old. Like I saw one woman was like 28. I'm like, that never used to happen, right?
No.
And
it didn't. Well, it's interesting. Before 1972, it did happen. And then it all changed with Olga and Nadia. Nadia Comaneci won the 1976 Olympics. She was 14 years old. That changed everything. You had to look like that. You had to, and there was this, your coaches were literally fighting against the clock and you were supposed to remain skinny enough that you would not get your period. Basically, that was the idea, is to remain prepubescent. And the belief was smaller, tinier, and you would be able to perform harder tricks, et cetera. Now, the entire, other than one athlete competing for Team USA, they were all in their 20s. And I think it's good for a lot of reasons. One, I think, a 27-year-old Simone Biles, who won the Olympics, is 27. She's more likely to stand up for herself and not accept the abuse. But also when you open that window of opportunity, I think you're not cramming so much training into such a short period of time that you're forcing an athlete to go back even when they're injured. Because I didn't want to miss a season. The belief was you only had maybe 4 good seasons at the elite level in you. So if you had an injury, you didn't let it heal because you weren't going to miss the season. So, opening the aperture, I think, allows for a healthier training environment.
So when you say season, you mean like a year?
Yeah, but there's a competitive season when you're,
right.
When you're at nationals and championships to make the national team, to make the world championship team. You don't want to miss that window because then you're kind of out of the running. But now, I mean, Simone Biles took off a year and a half. That was unheard of when I did gymnastics. She took off a year and a half and she came back and dominated at the Olympics.
Yeah, she's pretty.
She's pretty good.
It was pretty amazing. You know what I couldn't get over was how high she could get in the air. Like, so they showed her body would get 10 feet in the air. That's how high a basketball net is, right? Or brim. So then I looked up, well, how high is the record for women's high jump? And the women's high jump record is like 7 feet 6 inches. And she's doing, so I'm like, so I guess if you do the high jump, you can't do a flip first or something? Because why wouldn't... Go ahead. She's
on, when you say she's getting 10 feet in the air, I don't know if you're talking about on the floor exercise or on another event.
Floor exercise
does have springs in it.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh,
and it's gotten springier over the years. So the equipment has changed over the years. The bars are springier, so that flings them higher into the air. The floor mat, I mean, in the 70s, there were no springs. It was basically like tumbling on a piece of cement. And then in the early 80s, they introduced springs, but very decrepit, like not very high functioning springs. So she does have springs. But it's interesting you mentioned that about her, because I often wonder when normies are watching the sport, if they realize how much better she is than everybody else and how much harder the tricks are that she does.
Yeah, I did. Well, I noticed that, she would do, the last Olympics that she was in, she would do the pommel, not the pommel. What's the one where the
balance beam?
That you hit the horse and you do a flip?
Ball.
Yeah. So she would do that, and she was doing like a double backflip, which no one had ever you couldn't even do that. And,
right.
And so her degree of difficulty was off the chart, that nobody was even attempting the things that she was nailing.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It'll be many years before anyone reaches her level of difficulty. She's that sort of once in a lifetime talent. It's kind of amazing. Some of the things, because you're watching them spin and twist so much that you might not know she's doing an extra flip and an extra twist,
right? Yeah,
when others aren't. Yeah, she's pretty remarkable. But I don't know what else to say.
But that was the most amazing thing to me. The second was that almost all of them looked like real women. I guess it's been a long time since I watched female gymnastics, but I couldn't know them. Like, these look like women, like they're older than college aged women, right?
Yeah.
And
she's 27.
Yeah.
That's amazing. It's cool. I think it's awesome. And I think that they are in charge of their own, athletic careers in a way that we certainly were not at 13, 14, 15 years old. And I think, I don't know what you thought of this, but when Simone dropped out of the last Olympics, I think that is a result of that she was able to make a decision for herself. She knew that she was putting herself in danger. Now, would it have been better if she dropped out before the Olympics? Probably. But what people don't understand is how incredibly dangerous the sport is. And when you lose a sense of yourself in the air, you can break your neck, you can end up in a wheelchair, you can die. I know several athletes, gymnasts in wheelchairs. I know 2 that died doing the sport. So it's not like a slow day at the track where, I'm having a shitty day, my numbers are low, my time is slow. I mean, you literally are risking your life. So I don't think she would have been able to do that and make that decision for herself if she wasn't, a grown woman.
And let's just, remind people of, what led me to you was you were the working for Levi's in an executive position, and you had an opinion, and apparently you're not allowed to have opinions, even if they're correct, that go outside the mainstream. You're immediately, to me, it's like what the Soviet Union used to be like, right? Like, you're not allowed to go against the official narrative and opinion. You did. You spoke out. You thought that the kids should be back in school, which turns out to be correct. We were fear-mongered about that children were never at a risk from COVID. And now everybody admits that, except the people who, still watch cable news. So
MSNBC. Yeah,
so-
they're the only ones, I think.
So please,
won't admit it.
so can you just quickly tell your story again? How that happened that you were asked to leave the company?
Yeah, I worked at Levi's for 23 years, so I had a very long career there. Very proud of, helped the company go public, was the chief marketing officer for 8 years, which is like a ridiculously long tenure in a CMO job. I was a longtime San Francisco resident, and as soon as school closures and lockdowns happened, day one, March 13th, if not before that, we were very vocal and outspoken about how wrong that was, how it's just wrong. It's the most illiberal thing I can imagine to lock people in their homes, tell them they can't run their businesses, they can't worship, they can't send their children to school. Now, of course, this whole time, the wealthy San Franciscans are sending their children to in-person school and yelling. And I was a wealthy San Franciscan. I'm not trying to I was an executive, but my kids did go to public school. And I knew that student population. And I knew that this was just disastrous. So I was very outspoken about it. The people of San Francisco in general, San Francisco was a brutally oppressive place during COVID. We ended up leaving the city. We moved in the spring of 2021 to Denver, which is blue, but the schools were open. And we came so that our children could go to school. And ultimately, I resigned. I mean, it became too difficult. But here's the crazy part, Jimmy, after that, it was impossible. I'd already sort of proven myself to be this dissident in corporate America. And so, I needed a job. I have to work. I have 4 children. I am the breadwinner in our family. But if there's anything I will say about, how to get ahead in corporate America, you stick with the script. You don't use your own voice. You don't speak in your own words. And so as I began to interview, I took a little break, but then I started to interview for big jobs, CEO jobs. And I was asked repeatedly if I would publicly apologize for my actions. Now, this is in 2023. This is like long past the time when the New York Times is printing articles about the sort of devastating and surprising learning loss from school closure. It's surprising to no one paying attention. But, I said, apologize for what? I did nothing wrong. I was correct. And so it quickly became very clear to me that, going back to an established company in corporate America was not something that was going to be very possible for me. And so I started my own. I decided I was going to need to start my own company.
And so that brings us to your new company. So here is your new company. You have athletic wear for women and men, and it's called XXXY Clothing. And so it looks pretty groovy looking stuff. And even now, is that who I think it is?
Yeah.
That's right.
I mean, if you think it's Riley Gaines,
it's Riley Gaines, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
so Riley Gaines is a model for. So look at that. And so now, what led you to call it XXXY?
Well, I think after we've all just watched the, women's boxing in the Olympics, I think it's more clear to people why I called it that. But there is a truth. There are men and there are women. Women are XX, men are XY. It's called XXXY Athletics. So, it's really, we're the only brand standing up for the protection of women's sports. There's all these athletic brands out there. They all claim to champion female athletes. In reality, Nike in particular treats women athletes like total garbage. It's been sort of very publicly reported on, even by the New York Times. And so I felt like, it's time for, I'm a real athlete, a former athlete, but a real elite athlete. I have the expertise in the fashion business to make outstanding products. So this isn't just a gimmick. And I wanted to root it in the truth, because the language is so screwed up now. We say men can get pregnant. We say boys need tampons. And so is it any real wonder that a male can compete in women's boxing and beat the crap out of women and everybody cheers as this triumph of inclusion? I just wanted to kind of ground it in truth. There is such a thing as objective truth. And we seem to have forgotten that.
So I think the Riley Gaines situation was she was forced to compete against biological males who had gone through puberty as a male, right? And that gives you advantages, right? That your lungs are bigger, your bone structure, and there's a lot of people who think, well, if someone takes hormones for a certain amount of time, then it makes them equal, which it doesn't. And so I think they've lost that battle. The people who want to include biological males who have gone through puberty as a male in women's sports. And it is kind of mind-blowing to me that there's a reason why we have Title IX. There's a reason why you have women's sports. There's a reason why you have that. But I'm not an expert on any of this. I'm not a biologist. I'm a comedian. But there was more nuance to this latest thing in the Olympics, right? Because that boxer was born. Yeah. Let me just tell you what I think, and then you can tell.
Okay, great.
So she was. My understanding was that she is a very narrow category of person that has an XY chromosome, but also has a vagina and has testes inside, and she was raised as a girl and all that stuff, but she tested high for testosterone, not too high for a woman, but actually in the range of a man testosterone, which is, and so, so it wasn't, she wasn't trans. It wasn't one of those situations. So it's a little more nuanced than, but she was XY chromosome, and that typically means you're a male. But there was a little bit of nuance. So go ahead, tell me what.
It's true. That's almost 100% correct, what you just said. So do you remember Caster Semenya?
No, I do not.
Okay, Caster Semenya was a track and field athlete, same condition that these boxers have, has Olympic gold medals, is now no longer permitted because World Athletics, which is the international governing body for track and field, has said if you're XY, you have to be XX to compete in women's sports. That's their determination. It's governed by each of the individual governing bodies. So Caster Semenya does not have to give back her or his medals. I don't know what the person goes by at this point. The person is married to a female and the person has fathered 2 children. So male.
What?
Yes. So here's what this person has. And here's why it's linked to the trans ideology, because the language was brought to us by trans ideology. So there's a category of disorders, I guess. They're called DSDs, and they're sort of differences in sexual development. And there's a whole range of them, and they impact very small percentage of the population. This one is called 5ARD. So they're genetically male. Now, and keep in mind, the boxer, Imani Khalif, is Algerian. So probably not like the most advanced medical situation in that country, right? Probably not. So, but I think even people in more advanced countries don't know when they're born, because it appears, to your point, like they have a vagina. Basically, they have underdeveloped male genitals, and the testicles are inside and the penis is underdeveloped, and it appears to be a vagina. But here's the thing. They don't end up getting their period, and they do go through male puberty. And at that point, they do develop male genitalia.
Oh, so you're saying that boxer didn't go through puberty as a female? She went through puberty.
Well, they're being very cryptic, but what it seems like, and there's been more information that's come out in the last few days, is that these boxers, the IAB, which is the governing body for boxing, did testing at world championships last year for these 2 boxers, the Taiwanese boxer and the Algerian, and they both tested for XY chromosomes. Now, there's additional information coming out that their trainers knew, and that, when they were boxing in Spain at some major competition, they were always paired for sparring with males because they were injuring all the women. This has all been reported in various publications. So, my suspicion is, and again, everybody's being very cryptic, is that they were not necessarily born female, but they were raised probably until 12 or 13 believing they were female. I have a lot of empathy for these people. This is a really difficult thing, but at a certain point, they did know that they were male, and they continued to box, or chose to box, against women because they have an advantage. The Olympics, the IOC does not test for sex. They say there is no reliable test for sex eligibility.
Well, that is a chromosome test would be, right? I mean, that's what I would think.
Yes, they say that's no longer reliable. The science has changed. So this is why I say it's brought to you by trans ideology, because trans or gender ideology, they brought us, if you say you're a woman, you're a woman. It's vibes. If you feel like a woman, you are. And so the IOC is saying we're not doing that testing because there's this other science, which none of us are aware of, that says if you feel like a woman, you are. It's astonishing. I mean, that is what the corruption of language is. It leads us down this path. It's why I will no longer say trans women are women. I don't really think I ever said that, but they're not. They can be trans and they can be whatever they want to be and they can dress however they want, but they are not women. It's not the same.
So I had, I've always been a supporter of LGBTQ, and you shouldn't be discriminated against when it comes to, housing or marriage or employment and or any of that thing, and that you should be given the same dignity and respect to a trans person as you want for yourself, right? I think that attitude makes me an ally of the LGBTQ community. But then when you get into the area of sports or what is people not being able to define what a woman is, it starts to get into it starts to be absurd.
Yeah, and the problem, because I am in your camp. Look, I lived in San Francisco for 35 years. I worked in the fashion industry. Most of the people I knew in San Francisco are gay. I fought for gay marriage. I marched in the streets for it. Yes to all of that. But if you give in on the language and you acknowledge or you say or you're willing to kind of concede this point that trans women are women, then how do you say, but they can't compete in women's sports?
Right. I don't understand what's wrong with being a trans woman. I don't understand why that's so. But
just be that.
I do know. I did see a video of a gentleman went to a pride parade and went up to women and called them trans, and they're like, "I'm not trans. I'm a real woman." So he kind of got them at their own game, which was kind of interesting to see. Yeah, that women born biological women and don't want to be called trans. So that is different. So, well,
I wish I wasn't 5'3". I don't know. Like, you are what you are. Like, I'm short. What are we going to do about this? Here, let me tell you one other quick story. In the same Olympics, with all this controversy over these two boxers who did win gold, they didn't lose a single round leading up to the gold medal match. They didn't lose a single round in the whole thing. There was also a female boxer who says she's a trans man, Filipino. Guess what category that person boxed in?
The women's?
Yeah. She says she's a man. Why does she box in women's?
So there is a corruption of, I will admit there is definitely but I think I didn't know that. I only knew about the one Albanian.
I would try to say the name, but I can't pronounce it.
I didn't know this.
It's a Filipino boxer. I read about it in an LGBTQ publication.
Okay.
She says she's a man. She doesn't take testosterone. That would not allow her to compete in the women's category because they do test for testosterone. But he says, I consider myself a man because my heart says so.
Oh, but physically, that person is a woman, right? So that they don't have higher testosterone and they have XX chromosomes.
Yes. So I'm fine with this person competing in women's. Okay. That's where they should compete. Yeah. Just like the male boxers should compete in men's.
Okay. Yes, that's... I mean, I definitely have, sympathy or empathy or whatever the word is that applies. I have, my heart goes out to that boxer who was born XY, and
totally.
But at the same, someone has to defend women's sports. That's a reason why they have different categories.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason, to your point, in 1972 that Title IX passed so that women could have equal opportunity. If women had to compete against men, they would never make the team, they would never make the squad, they would never get a scholarship, they would never make anything. So there is a reason, but even Title IX is on the chopping block at this point because it's been rewritten by the Department of Education. You know, I think you raised Riley. So Riley did have to swim in the 2022 NCAA championships against Will Thomas, formerly against Leah Thomas, formerly Will Thomas. Now, here, this demonstrates the advantage. As a male swimmer, Will Thomas was ranked 462nd in the country.
It's pretty comical.
In 1 year, less than 1 year, same training, same school, same everything, he was ranked in the top 3 across a variety of races. Now, of course, people say, oh, trained really hard. Anyone who's been an athlete knows you don't leap 450 spaces because of tough training in 1 year.
Right. I mean, you know, Serena Williams talks about this on the David Letterman show about how it's a totally different sport, female tennis and male tennis, and that you know the most mediocre of men tennis pros could beat her. And in fact,
well, she said that,
go ahead.
Does she still say it though, or she said that a while ago? I don't know if she'd still say it.
Well, I know that she decided to challenge a male who was ranked like 214th or something, and he beat her while smoking a cigarette and drinking beer. So after he played,
true?
After he played 18 rounds of golf that morning, or 18 holes of golf. Yeah. And so that's a story that I've reported on this show. So that it doesn't make it you know it doesn't serve anybody to deny biology, and that's so now you have this clothing and it's called XXY, and look, it looks like you got Kanye West to do. That's not Kanye West, but it looks kind of like that.
I don't know if probably I would avoid that at this point.
So right. So you have so how's that going? How's your clothing company going?
It's good. We just launched about 4 months ago, so we're brand spanking new. But given, you know, I think that the attention on this issue in particular, you know, with the Olympics and the rewrite of Title IX has really caused people to lean in. You know, I think a lot of people wanted to sit this one out, but now they're going, wait a minute, this is really unfair. I want my daughter to have the same opportunities I had. So, they're leaning in, and we're experiencing tremendous support. We're kind of way ahead of our projections, and it's also a really good product. You know, it's the performance product, the leggings, the moisture wicking, all of it, the tanks and tees. I mean, our return rates are like under 5%, which is crazy. And apparel online shopping, it's usually 25%. So I think people come for the mission and the message, but they stay because the product is actually good.
Okay. All right. And it's xx-xy.com?
xx-xyathletics.com. But you could also go to thetruthfits.com.
Okay. All right. Well, Jennifer, it's great to talk to you again. I wish you good luck with your new venture, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for having me, Jimmy.
Okay.
Have a good one.
All right. You too.
Bye.
Let's go to a break, and we'll be right back.
Because democracy basically means government by the people, of the people, for the people. But the people are retarded.
tunnels make themselves. They found a rabbi hole, tunnels and all. There's Jews in the walls. Isn't it bliss? The rabbinical breeze soiling the mattresses. Well, let me tell you. If I were Rabbi Shmuley and diddle 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 digga digga diddle diddle dum, all day long I'd diddle little bums. If I were a Shmuley man, I'd peddle all my dildos, dreidel dildos, selling dildos with my daughter and her mum. If I were a Jewish Shmuley man, I'd be digging with a dildo in my bum. I'd wear a grotesque nose and go grab some goyim right on the nipple with a pinch. A Shabbos lap dance brace for the youngest mensch.
At this time, more than any other time, revolution is necessary. It is necessary. Not only based on what has happened with the MOVE organization, the babies that have been murdered, MOVE adults that have been murdered, bombs being dropped on us, but past that to what is happening with all black people, so-called minority people, money poor people. This government, as has been said earlier, has waged war on us. But something about us, particularly here in America, we don't really understand that. We don't really know what war is. For black people, for poor people, that people see as good, that they wasn't forced to do, that they didn't do to try to keep black people appeased, and calm down so that black people wouldn't riot. A prison situation is a crystallized example of that. You can make phone calls in prison. They have movies in prison, but they don't have those things because they just want to be nice to prisoners. They have those things because they know damn well if they don't have, people being able to contact their family, if they don't have, facilities for people to sit there and watch movies, people are going to be frustrated, upset, and they're going to direct that frustration at them prison administrators, and they're going to have riots on their hands. They're going to have people in them prisons turning them prisons out. That's why they have movies. That's why they have access to phones the way they do. And a stop to it when we don't like it, or encouraging it when it's something that's in our interest. We have to call the shots. The people have to take the reins of this system and start dictating what we need, what needs to be done. And, taking the initiative to do it ourselves. We can't rely on this system. Don't people see what's happening? Every single confrontation that MOVE people have been involved in, every single issue, oppression, economic issues, every single issue facing our people, is something that can be dealt with very, very simply. All people got to do is make their wishes known. All people have to do is stand up and say, listen, we're not accepting that. Unity is the key. Unity is the key to revolution. Revolution ain't nothing to be afraid of. It ain't nothing to shy away from. Revolution, contrary to what officials, this system and those backing the officials running this system, want people to believe that revolution means violence, means blood in the street. I'm saying it can get to that point, but it don't have to be violent. When people come together and take a strong stand on an issue, this government don't have no choice but to listen. Where you think they get their authority from? They don't have no power, but they do have authority to do certain things. Where do you think they get it from? They get it from us, from the people. They get it from us accepting the things that they do to be done to stop it, then you have some people who want to then turn around and say, yeah, well, you know, it's the best we have, and want to make excuses. The time for excuses is over. It's over. You know, every man, woman, and child has to be involved in this revolution. Not only has to be, but is, whether you want to be or not. I mean, our babies gave their lives for this revolution on May 13th. You know, men, women, and children were murdered. And not just move babies, you know. What about all of the young men, women, you know, children 8, 9 years old shot down on the street by cops, you know, by drug pushers? I mean, you know, where do you think that mentality comes from? It comes from this system, from the mentality of this system of getting over, you know, making a quick buck, you know. I'm saying that's where that needs to be done to stop it. Then, you know, what I want people to really, really understand is that it's past time. It is past time for poor people, black people, you know, to realize that this system has failed you. It has failed you. You can't get nothing from it. And what people got to do is withdraw our support from it and start doing for ourselves. That's what we got to do. You know, how long are people going to sit back and beg, you know, this government to do what's right when for hundreds of years all you've gotten is a slap in the face? All you've gotten is this government kicking your ass. That's all. That's all black people have ever gotten from this government.
Hey, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there for more AM Joy and the rest of MSNBC. And click on any of the videos right here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. And you can get more videos from MSNBC for free every day with our newsletter. Just visit